I think one of the biggest reasons that I'm doing this video is because his audience is made up of 12 to 14-year-olds, like dominantly, and
I would date like the absolute youngest, like 18, 19.
And he is role modeling to them his behavior. His behavior online is what they are seeing and what they are emulating as how they should behave. Everything is over-sexualized. I finally have had enough. The last phone conversation that James Charles and I had, he said some things and it literally made me want to vomit.
Hi, my name is Jem, and today we are going to reload why James Charles will continue to make the same mistake again and again and again. I always say people do not change ... unless they want to. There are certain habits we develop in childhood throughout our teens that don't just disappear as soon as we turn 18 and are declared an adult. We are going to listen to a video of James telling us in his own words everything that he's been caught doing now, he's been doing since childhood. But first, I want to catch everybody up on the latest scandal. Apparently, James has been outed by using his fame to badger another straight man into being his boyfriend.
So if I'm being like, oh my God, David, you're annoying, over text, right? You don't know if I'm saying like, oh my God, David, you're being annoying. Or like, oh my God, David, you're being annoying. Or like, oh my God, David, you're being annoying. Because all three of those are completely different like emotions that you cannot see through text. You only get to actually experience those through a FaceTime call or through being in person.
Now, even though we already discussed this in my first two James Charles videos, I'm going to do a quick recap just to catch everybody up. James Charles' first mistake was when he said long time ago that as a gay man, he only wants to date straight men.
In similar situations, we also have very similar
Taste.
in guys too.
Hot.
Masculine.
Straight. We just want what we can't have.
Yeah,
and,
but we get it.
And if they want it,
Oh, they want it.
and we don't want it then.
James, to most people listening to you, it sounds like you're saying you only want to date men who aren't interested in dating you. I'm sure in your head there is some kind of nuance that we are all missing, but the fact remains your declaration alone has us all giving you the side eye. James has said before his dating habits should be of no concern since Jeffree Star does the same thing.
A lot of times I've talked about being into straight guys. Now, in order to provide a little bit more context, I would like to play a clip from Tati's friend Jeffree Star's video titled The Truth About My Relationship.
I am really not attracted to anyone but what we call in this world as a straight male or a normal dude. And
If you have to point to Jeffree Star to co-sign your behavior, you've already lost the battle and the war. Now, we will highlight the warning signs James Charles gave us where he hit on men who are not interested in him. In early 2019, Jeff Wittick, a straight older man, appeared on James Charles' channel and politely played into James's crush on him.
Can you do one of those spongy things? I love them. I just want to squeeze them.
Okay.
Can I squeeze it?
You can squeeze whatever you want. How tall are you?
I'm like 6'1", 6'2", maybe.
I love
Sometimes.
that. Okay, cool.
This is the mic that you guys use. You don't have like lav mics on. Are you wearing a lav mic under here?
No? Do you want to check?
No?
Do you want to check in my nuggets? Can I check under you?
Yeah, you could check under there.
Anywhere up
I got
there?
nothing.
Oh,
Okay. Okay.
On Jeff's second collab with James, James explained his philosophy on sexuality. A quick note, when someone tells you they have a philosophy by which they live their life, listen very closely to what they have to say. They are giving you information that is vital into understanding who a person is and how they operate. So let's listen to James explain the human condition.
Yeah, let's talk about it. In science, in regards to like LGBTQ people, there's what's called the Kinsey scale. So the Kinsey scale is from like 0 to 6, 0 being like completely straight, and 6 being like completely gay.
Okay.
And I truly believe that the amount of people that are a flat out 0 or a flat out 6 is like very small. I think that most people are very close to the ends, but there's a huge percentage in the middle too.
Now, what I learned about James is he believes straight people are the outliner and the majority of people fall somewhere in the middle, which means he believes most people can swing one way or the other So after a brief flirtation between James and Jeff, Jeff finally told James in no uncertain terms he was not interested.
When I collaborated with him and, he said some things that were like a little flirty, and I was like, hey man, not gay. Let's move on. And then he was like, okay, we'll move on.
Yeah.
Let's do a video. And we talked about it in the video. And that was the end of the story.
And now that we know James's philosophy on life, we can determine that he either thought that Jeff was part of that tiny percentage of straight men who he believes is exclusively heterosexual, according to the scale, or James may think Jeff was lying about not being interested in him.
It's like,
Neither do I.
I just watched this my video with Jeff. I truly believe that there's the scale. I mean, it's the Kinsey scale. We all know about this. From 0 to 6, your level of straight to perfectly gay. And I really do believe that the amount of people on either end is very small.
That's very.
It's very, very small, because most people at some point in their lives, whether it's if in the right circumstances with the right person under the influence of either drugs or alcohol, are going to be willing to experiment and
you
play
just
with
don't
themselves
know.
and be more comfortable.
James may have concluded that Jeff being 10 years older, he was too set in his ways. James might have thought that it was time for him to go to someone around his own age. And hey, being with someone his own age would not have been a problem, except he was still going after straight men. Let's listen to what Tati Westbrook told us about her close friend at the time, James Charles.
Oh my God, you tried to trick a straight man into thinking he's gay yet again, and somehow you're the victim. You know, it's really disgusting to manipulate someone's sexuality, especially when they are still, emerging into adulthood and don't quite have everything figured out. You are using your fame, your power, your money to play with people's emotions. You're threatening to ruin them. You're threatening to embarrass them. And you're doing that to have them behave in your favor, even if they're straight. And you know what? That's not okay. That behavior is not okay. Whether you're a woman, a man, gay, straight, bi, whatever sexual orientation you are.
Since Tati and James were very close at that time, I believed her concerns about him were valid. She warned us all a long, long time ago. And James did agree with her assessment of him.
Coincidentally enough, Tati really was one of the people to sit me down and tell me how it looked from the outside, and let me know, hey, talking to these boys might get you in trouble one day. And she was right.
See, that was James' raw, emotional first response to Tati's video. However, after he got some sleep, he came back with another highly produced video that was well received. Yet, in that same video, he admitted that Tati was right in her assessment of his behavior.
1 week ago, I uploaded a video to my YouTube channel titled Tati. This video was a direct response to the video that Tati Westbrook uploaded to her channel titled By Sister. Before I say anything at all in this video, I want to make it very, very clear that everything I said in that video in regards to my sentiments towards Tati and my apology, I stand behind 100% and still reign true.
Remember the straight waiter Tati was speaking about? Well, he came out with a video exposing James as well as another straight guy.
He offered to fly me out again and I declined. Because I didn't want to use him for his money or his fame. I felt that that was wrong, and that's what everyone was telling me, that it would have been wrong to go out there if I wasn't actually feeling the same way that he was. So I declined for the second time the trip to LA. He still went on to say he thought I was bisexual or gay and attracted to him when I had told him different. That pretty much went on for a long time until we kind of ended it at, I'm legitimately not feeling anything, please stop talking to me, this and that.
James then saw this as an opportunity to manipulate me as a person who may or may not have been trying to figure things out about their sexuality after the fact of telling him that I was straight multiple times. He then started to begin putting a little bit of pressure on me, of getting to know me without disregarding the fact that I told him I was straight, because as you all know, this person 99.9, maybe even 100% of the time goes after heterosexual men.
It's funny that in 2023, the new buzzword is how horrible it is to be a sex pest. Yet in 2019, it wasn't that big of a deal to pester people for sex, it seemed.
On things because you're missing somebody's facial expressions, right? So because you refuse to hang out with people or because you refuse to FaceTime, you're not allowing people to actually get to know you as like a human being. And that's a massive, massive problem whenever it comes to being in a relationship with somebody. You cannot fall in love with somebody simply just from text.
Okay, so a year later in 2020, Tati let us know that she and James had made up privately and she apologized to him for her actions. However, listen to what she stated about her Bye Sister video.
James Charles has made his fair share of mistakes and has been in scandals. We all have, but I always believed in him, as he had a rare ability to improve himself through any situation. However, prior to the scandal last May, I'd started growing frustrated with what I perceived as a progressing sense of entitlement, and I felt that he was making some detrimental choices that could jeopardize his career and safety.
One thing she was sure to make clear, she did not lie on James.
When I made my video, I expressed my opinions about James Charles's behavior. I expressed how much a specific decision he made that I perceived as betrayal hurt me. I was very worried and heartbroken, but I did not lie in that video.
Okay, well, after that, James continued on his merry way, and summer of 2020, he went on Impulsive to speak with Logan Paul, and there is where he told us what he was all about.
Okay, so the thing is for me, I'm 21, but like I said, I have the mentality of a 40-year-old.
Yeah.
So for me, like I'm much more mentally and emotionally mature than a lot of people my age. I'm not physically attracted to older guys, which sucks. Like I would date like the absolute youngest, like 18, 19 that looks a little bit older, or like 24 that like has a young personality.
Okay.
So like, hey, like why don't you come visit? And like, well, I can't afford a plane ticket. And it's like, okay, well, I can. So like get on the plane. And like, well, I just don't really feel comfortable with that. But like I love you and I really want to be together. And I'm like, well, we can't be together because you can't afford a plane ticket. You're probably still in either high school or college, like a senior in high school or in college.
Right.
So like either
My age or younger, high school, senior? Hey, he said it. I'm just repeating it. And wouldn't you know, slowly but surely, a bunch of underage teens came out about James sending them inappropriate pictures through Snapchat. My only thought at this point was that James striking out with straight men his own age got him looking for someone younger. You know, in the same way we hear some straight men saying they look for really young women to date because they are moldable, easier to control. Yeah, that's what I think James is about. I think James felt as though a younger mind would be less likely to be programmed by society and easier to convince that being straight is on a spectrum. The same way we saw he was persistent with an older man like Jeff, the two men around his age. Okay, well now imagine him being so persistent with a minor. And just to be crystal clear, the only community James is representing, based on his behavior, is the pest community. In the beginning of 2021, everything finally started to crumble for James Charles. Remember the Notes app apology he released after a 16-year-old accused him of sending inappropriate pics through Snapchat? And this is one of the teens out of many. The only thing that stood out to me is that James Charles admitted to the allegations being true. No surprise, because James Charles admits to the wrong things he does because he doesn't know they're wrong. Look at this video.
in case anybody isn't aware of what's going on, within the past couple of weeks, 2 different people, both under the age of 18, have recently come forward saying that they had inappropriate messages with me on social media. One of them being from last year and one of them being from more recent. In both of these cases, I added these people on Snapchat, asked how old they were right away, was told that they were 18, believed them, engaged in a flirty conversation, and then later on found out that they were actually 16.
I seriously don't believe these YouTubers deal with any actual lawyers, because there is zero chance a lawyer would look at this video and say, "Great, James, you just admitted to committed a crime. Let's upload this video ASAP." There's no way. James, multiple times you confessed to committing a crime by sending those pics to minors. I do want to add that James uses the word flirty as a way of getting around saying what he actually did. But by him even receiving lewd photos, as he says, from the minors, that is still a crime. Like, for real, y'all, I was waiting for James to be arrested. But he wasn't. So now I'm thinking he might have paid off the parents for them not to press charges. Because if they did, he would have been convicted. James sent the pictures and then he confessed to sending the pictures. Case closed. People do not change unless they want to. James doesn't want to change because he doesn't think he did anything wrong. You notice how even when responding to the allegations, James thinks that the teens lying about their ages and being forward in their communication with him makes him not guilty of the crime, when in actuality, ignorance is not a defense when you commit a crime. James thinks that because he was blissfully unaware of the teens' real ages, he cannot be held accountable. Thankfully, that's not how the law works, because more people would take advantage of minors and hide behind the fact that they were lied to in order to escape prosecution. And finally, we get to the heart of the matter. There's an old video on James's channel, and the instant I saw it, I was able to figure him out. James is who he is on the internet because he's always been doing the same thing on the internet. Let's listen to James explain in his own words why he is the way he is.
Let's jump into the story. That I've never actually told my coming out story because I've said that there was legal problems with it and I didn't know if I could really tell it without getting in trouble.
James's issue with minors and pestering straight men has nothing to do with him being gay, but it just so happens that coincidentally, this issue ties in with his coming out story. James says because of legal issues, he wanted to make sure he could tell this story without getting in trouble. The legal issue and trouble he talks about will be explained further on.
I was 12 years old at the time. I had just gone through puberty, and just like every other boy, I was going through that stage of life. You guys know that I've definitely always been very, very active on social media. At the time, there were a lot of really, really famous bloggers that I loved and looked up to. And one website that all these famous bloggers would always go on to meet their fans was called Omegle, which is an online chat room.
In 2011, James would have been 12 years old, and the rules for Omegle stated that you had to be 13 years old with permission from a parent to use the site. So already we see that as a child, James was not being monitored closely by his parents while he was all over social media. Please note that as of today, Omegle has updated its age restriction to 18 years and older for very good reason.
I remember going on Omegle literally all the time and sitting there for hours, clicking through different strangers, trying to find different famous bloggers that I really, really loved and wanted to meet and just wanted to talk to for a few short seconds.
James remembers what it's like to be 12 years old, roaming through the internet for the chance of communicating with his idols. Do you notice how cocky James sounds when you read the screen messages he sends to people now? To me, James is thinking, these guys I'm contacting should be excited that I'm communicating with them because I would be happy if I were them.
When you're scrolling through strangers' video cameras on an anonymous live video cam website, I'm sure you can imagine what I started to come across as a hormonal 12-year-old.
And here is where things took a turn for James. One day he was having fun on the internet, and then the next day, everything changed, and not for the better. James further explains that he had some alone time for an hour or so after school because his parents were working, so that was the time where he would explore Omegle without anyone seeing what he was up to.
The visits to Omegle became more and more frequent until they were literally a daily occurrence, which thinking about it now is literally so repulsive, but at the time, I'm not even gonna lie, I was definitely addicted to it.
He was addicted to watching explicit live action interactive videos on the internet. Addicted is a very strong word for him to use, and he used it for a reason.
It was a fun challenge for me, which is so psychotic to think about, but
a fun challenge for me. This is how James was thinking in 2011. Remember how I said people don't change? Listen to how Tati described James in 2019.
Because this behavior is not normal, it's not okay. Cracking someone's sexuality is not an escape room.
James has always talked about his love for escape rooms.
I love doing escape rooms because they're so fun. Have you done them before?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just love them because like they're working all day long. The makeup industry can be a little bit tiring, and some of the people in it are not the smartest. So I just like really challenging myself, and like I like making my brain work very, very hard. And sometimes throughout the day, some days after a really stressful day, I like going into a more high stress situation, like an escape room. Like I like challenging myself always, like all the time.
James has a way of treating situations as challenges, and he treats his dating life the same way. Today, James continues to be exposed, whereas most other famous single YouTubers don't have these issues. The problem is that James insists on taking the road less traveled for the challenge of it all, and then wants to play victim when things don't go the way he wants them to go.
I was 12, I was very, very hormonal, I was going through puberty, and that's why I'm telling this story now, because obviously it's a very, very serious and scary thing that I don't want any of you guys to go through, so listen up.
I do believe that James had good intentions for sharing his childhood experience as a warning to his young audience of potential dangers on the internet. However, if James has yet to truly process what happened to him as a child, it would not be the right time for him to share his story.
Also, as well, very, very important thing to know, I was a minor at the time. I was obviously 12 years old, but I never once got naked on camera, and to this day, I have still never sent a dickety-pickety. That's for personal reasons.
That's good to hear, James, but it needs to be made clear that even if James did send a pic to an adult as a minor in the eyes of the law and society as a whole, he would not have been punished. The adult in that situation would bear all of the responsibility. That point should have been made clearer to his younger fans.
But every single time, it would always be a guy who was above age, doing his business, and then when he would ask me to take my clothes off, I'd always be like, oh, my camera's broken, I don't know what's going on, it won't turn on. What the heck, this is so weird, this has never happened before.
So James wants us to know that even though he didn't appear naked on camera, he also never interacted with another minor. Now, if it was two minors, that would be a crime. But according to California state law, if they are charged in juvenile court, would be more likely to be sentenced to counseling, curfews, and community service.
So I could avoid, obviously, taking my clothes off, which I did not want to do and did not want to blind anybody with, and also, of course, breaking the law. So although this is a horrible idea, I did not break any laws, which is great, obviously, but once again, still, please do not do this, literally ever.
Correct. 12-year-old James did not break a law. However, a law was broken. Here is where he missed a big opportunity to tell his young fans what to do if an adult was preying on them over the internet. He needed to stress that it is never their fault falling victim to an online predator, and he should instruct them to tell their parents or another trusted adult what is happening. I keep thinking back to the way in which adult James made the teens who he interacted with feel as though they were in the wrong when it was him all along. Okay, so this is when James tells us that eventually he was caught by his parents. He was caught like literally red-handed handling his business, and that was when they discovered he was gay because they searched his internet history.
Out of my parents in my entire life. I love them the most. We've always been very, very close, but this conversation meant a lot to me because instead of freaking out about me being gay, and my dad is very, very Catholic as well, so that was something that I was super, super scared about. The conversation was very obviously more tailored towards, please don't do this, this is so dangerous.
I want to take the time to acknowledge James's religious parents' reaction to him being gay and how they made the conversation about the dangerous things he was doing and not about his sexuality. James looks back positively at this memory, and it's good to hear about their strong relationship.
Please don't do this. This is so dangerous. There are predators out there, like you are putting yourself at such a major risk, and we don't want to see you either get in trouble or get hurt.
Here's the thing, Mom and Pop. The predators weren't out there. James did meet the predators, and he did get hurt. I don't know what they mean by saying they didn't want James to get in trouble, because James at 12 was the victim, and there was no trouble for him, only for the predators, if they were to be caught. I don't even want to imagine what those men were saying to a young James, because they were able to talk to him even though James had his camera turned off. James at 12 years old sounded, I'm sure, like a little boy, which means those men knew they were contributing to the delinquency of a minor. James already told us he was addicted to this behavior. Was he continually talking to the same men enough to develop a relationship? He was spending hours and days. Who knows what was going on during those hours and days? One conversation is not enough to get to the bottom of what was happening with James while he was alone on the internet. After his parents had this talk with him, they should have at the very least got him into therapy. He didn't go through a small little thing. It wasn't that he was looking at pictures or videos on the internet. He was being victimized by on the internet continuously, and things like that just don't go away overnight just because you had a conversation. I'm sure there was a lot of things that went down that James has yet to even tell his parents.
I'm so thankful for that because from that day on, I never once did it again. And I've always been so careful about that. And I've always been a very, very huge advocate for myself and my friends about online pornography and chat rooms like that. But
for me, this is the part of the story that I don't believe. I know there are people who can go cold turkey, but we've seen James now throughout the years, and this doesn't ring true. He was still always on the internet at 16, 17 when he became famous. So I don't understand how he could still have access to the internet and never did it again. Because we see very quickly at 19, when we discovered that he was contacting his fans and people through the internet. I don't see where this behavior ever stopped. And James did say in 2020 that he stopped pursuing straight guys.
it's really hard for me to find people already that like want to date.
Yeah.
Period. But then a lot of times too, a lot of the guys that I'm attracted to are either like, I had that whole thing with straight guys for a long time. I'm over that. But a lot of the guys that I'm attracted to happen to be like bi or whatever.
And then we found out a couple of years later that he was still pursuing straight guys. So no, I don't believe this part of the story. And James, I'm not blaming you one single bit for what happened to you at 12 years old. It was your parents' responsibility, since they did find out later what happened to you, to get you the help that you needed. But now you are an adult and you're still continuing this same cycle. Now is the time for you to actually get the help that you need and process what happened to you as a child.
Obviously, it was very, very embarrassing at the time, and thank God me and my family can laugh about it now, several years later.
I don't care how many severals you put in front of the word years, James. Oh, I didn't show it, but James is referring to, I guess, the moment his dad actually caught him in his room, feeling himself, so to speak. Yeah, I get in that instance, if you were to just look at that moment, you may think, yeah, that was embarrassing, and years later you can laugh at it. However, now we do know that that moment has context around it. And when James' father caught him, he was being taken advantage of by an adult on the other side of the computer screen. So no, it's not a laughing matter, especially with the fact that we see James still trapped in this cycle.
I think this story does have a very, very, very important message behind it of internet safety. Parents and kids, please be careful as to what you do online. Please do not send risky pictures to anybody via text, via Snapchat, via any app that is currently popular right now.
We see that he's doing the very thing that he's telling his fans not to do.
It is so incredibly dangerous. You never know what they're doing with that picture. They could screenshot it, they could screen record, they could take a picture even with their phone, so it's on the deal, and you would never, ever, ever know until it comes back 10 years later as blackmail. It is just so dangerous and so stupid. You never know who's watching, you never know who's recording, you never know what people's true intentions are. There are some really, really, really crappy people out there, and please learn from my mistakes. It's dangerous, and it's very, very embarrassing if you get caught, so.
This is how I know that James has not learned his lesson. When it's time for him to give advice to children and their parents, he's talking about being blackmailed. But the moral of this story was for him to tell his young viewers that he fell victim to predators online, and if the same thing happens to them, they should immediately get help. He should have also informed the parents who are watching his channels to better protect their children from the internet by having a family computer in the living room with the screen visible, as well as a lot of young people have cell phones nowadays. They should put child safety features on these phones. And there are apps that you can put on where you can keep track of what your children are up to. And if you do use those apps, I suggest you let your children know that you can watch what they're doing, just so that they don't think that you are spying on them. And it's not every time you see the victim become the victimizer, but it's right here in front of us. how James was able to be 12 and be taken advantage of and now be the adult in the situation and is doing it to others. And the reason why this could be is the fact that because James has never processed what happened to him as a child, even right now as he tells the story, he doesn't think he was taken advantage of. And I think that's why also in these other cases where he did get caught up with minors and he didn't have sympathy for them, it was also because he didn't see them as a victim, the same way he didn't see himself as a victim at 12 years old. Here we see he has a history, but the history does not have to continue. James can change, but he has to want to change for himself.
Don't do that, and story time complete. Whew.
I told you that this was not good and that you could have your career completely destroyed. His